Today is June the 2nd, 2014. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we're in Okeene, Oklahoma, to speak with Violet Stephenson.
Right.
And this is part of our 100 Year Life project, so thank you so much for having us today.
Most welcome.
Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in northern Blaine County, Oklahoma, 1 mile south of Carlton, Oklahoma.
And when?
September the 9th, 1913.
And were you born at home?
Yes.
And you have brothers and sisters?
There were 6 of my family. I was number 4. 3 girls and 3 boys.
Okay, so which one, how many before you then, boys and girls?
1 girl and 2 boys.
Okay, and where did you go to elementary school?
It was called Broadview, District number 81, Blaine County. It was just a mile from where I lived.
So would you walk or
Yeah,
take a horse or what?
we walked. It
And
was a luxury if you had a horse.
what did your parents do for a living?
They were farmers. My father came here in 1892, and he was a week after the opening, but to stake his claim. The first wheat crop he raised on that farm, he made $37 for the whole year. That's all. So he decided he had to go elsewhere to live, to work. And he got on a freight train and rode it to Denver. He worked at Denver a while, and then when they found out he was a farm boy that could handle horses, they hired him at Idaho Spring to drive a team carrying the silver out of the mine. He was quite a guy. He only got to go to school to the 4th grade. And his father said it was time for him to go to work. So he did. He was one of 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. But he was a man you'll never forget if you knew my father. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yep.
He was one of a kind, but and when he died, he started, you remember, with just a claim. He had 18 quarters plus. Enough for all the children to have 3 quarters.
So did he keep the land when he went to Denver?
Yeah.
He kept the land here?
His father lived right next there, and he just didn't amount to much. It's not very good farm. But anyway, where we moved, we got a good land. We got lots of good land over there. He was a big cattleman. What else can we say about Dad, Bill? He definitely was one of a kind.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say.
And he didn't believe in dilly-dallying around. You're supposed to get up and go to work. Have a reason to go to work and stay in there till it was finished.
And what about your mother?
She was very intelligent. She graduated from high school in Idaho Springs. Now that's not a good combination, a 4th grader and a graduate, but it worked out great. And my 2 oldest brothers, we lived 8 miles from Canton. You won't believe this, but God help me, it's the truth. They rode horses to high school every day for 4 years. Now, do you know of anybody else that did that?
I do not.
They they learned a lot from my father. He insisted that they get a good education. And then the girls had to go to college. We couldn't work on the farm. But anyway, everybody had a job.
And what was yours?
Lots of chores around. Everybody had their own little thing they had to do. And mine was to clean up the table when they were through eating, carry the dishes to the kitchen, wash the dishes, and I had to do a lot of things. Did I tell you I drove 7 miles to high school? When I got ready to go to high school, they couldn't put me on a horse to go, so he had to teach me to drive when I was 13.
Why couldn't they put you on a horse?
Would you put a girl on a horse to ride 7 miles for 9 months? No, you don't do that. So they taught me to drive, and everybody got out of the way.
What were the roads like?
Terrible. I had a gravel road for, I think, about 2 miles. The rest of it was dirt roads. And I remember one time I had to go through mud puddles. You're too young to know what it was like. It was horrible. And the car died, and the starter wouldn't work, so I had to crank it. And it kicked, and it almost broke my arm. That wasn't fun. But anyway, I went 4 years to high school, graduated at Southern, Oklahoma. You know where Southern is?
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness. That girl is living a sheltered life.
Well, let's back up. Where did you graduate from high school?
Southern.
Near Canton? No?
Oh, how far is Southern from Canton?
6 miles
About 6
okay.
miles.
east.
And what year?
What year did I graduate?
Mm-hmm.
1931. I entered in 27 and graduated in 31.
And how long would it take you to drive those 7 miles?
If nobody was looking, I could go pretty fast. Oh, I don't know. Maybe 30 minutes. It's just country roads. They weren't good.
Did you ever race your brothers? Did you ever race your brothers? They were on horse, right?
Yeah, they rode horses. They had to go to work on a farm. They were plowing and doing everything. But my father, his girls didn't work on the farm. We just had to tend to the house, take care of the chickens and turkeys and things like that.
And help can?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That was a big part of our life. We had a big cellar. You know what a cellar is?
I do.
And it was a nice cellar. You could put lots of things down there. And it was just like our, well, what would you call it today? Well, anyway, all of your canning and your fresh fruit and everything was in the cellar. That was one of my jobs, to go up and down those cellar steps. But it was all right. The one frightening thing in my life, and I still remember it just like yesterday, my brother brought me home from school in a storm, in the middle of a storm. The back door was open. I went in and there wasn't anybody there. I thought, what has happened to this world? They were all in the cave. That's the only time they ever went to the cave, when the storm was so bad. So it didn't take me long. I went to the cave too.
Now, is the cave different from the cellar?
No, it's all the
Same thing.
Mm-hmm. It was a great place. It was big, but you always felt safe down there. I don't know, I suppose my folks made me do that, but it was good.
What was the rest of the house like?
Well, my house had 5 bedrooms, 2-story, two bedrooms upstairs and a little sitting place up there on the second floor. The downstairs was the kitchen and the dining room, the living room, and 3 bedrooms. It was a big, and then a big porch on the west. Had a big porch on the south too. It was a big house. It's still standing.
Okay. And running water?
Running.
Indoor plumbing?
Oh, no. I don't know how to answer that. Our well was just out on the outside of the big porch, but I got lots of muscles from that.
And was there an outhouse?
Well, sure.
A 2-seater or a 1?
2.
2. You were uptown.
We thought we were. Our whole world out there, it was a fun place. Lots of lively things going on out there. New baby colts and new little calves, and the season, rotates. And he was a big cattle man. How big a cattle man was he, Bill?
At one time he had 300 cows.
Yeah. No.
That's a lot of cows from that day.
If you're a city girl, you don't know what that is, but that's the big thing. You gotta feed them.
Took a lot of grass.
Yeah.
That's why he had so much land.
And Bill was his first grandson. And one time, I don't think Bill was 6 years old. He went to the barn with Grandpa. And Grandma was in Colorado visiting. So I was out there taking care of things. And I got to worrying about him. I hadn't heard from him for a while. So I went down the path and began to call. And my dad, before that, there was a horse came out around the barn, 90 miles an hour, that thing hanging onto his mane. That just about stops your heart. Anyway, I began to scream and yell, and my dad came out of the barn and said, "Violet, you're not raising a sunflower." He was raising a boy on a horse. He lived to tell the story, because there he is.
When I was about 6 years old, we rode around Canton Lake when they just started it.
Yeah.
Me and Grandpa. There was an Indian who tried to cut across the lake, and he had to swim his horse quite a ways.
When he was a little boy, his conversation always started, "Me and my grandpa." And then he'd tell you something.
Well, let's back up a little bit. When you graduated from high school, what did you do?
Went to college at Northwestern, Alva, for 2 years. And I just thought I knew everything I needed to know. So I applied to teach the home school, and they let me for 3 years. And then my youngest sister was eligible to be a teacher, so I said, "I will step down and you ask for this job and see if you get it." And she did. And then I taught just 2 miles east of where I lived. And let's see, I taught there 2 years, and then I got married and moved to Okeene. Here I've been ever since.
How did you meet your husband?
At a dance. I was a good dancer. Yeah.
What kind of dancing, though?
What do you mean? What
Square dancing or
No.
ballroom or what?
Yeah, ballroom. And my kids are good dancers. Dancing was a big part of our life.
And where would you dance?
Well, there was a public, what do you call it? What was Longdale, Bill?
Dance hall.
Yeah, it was a dance hall. Oh my goodness. How many people would go? Like maybe 400. It was a big thing. Dancing was real important in those days. Not so much anymore.
How often would you go?
Once a week. They had a dance every Saturday night. Yeah. Do you dance?
Only when no one's watching.
Oh, come on. It's great exercise.
It sure is. How did you learn?
Just learned them at home. My big brothers would dance with me. I had 2 big brothers, and my sister and I would dance with my brothers. My folks liked lots of music, and I do too.
On the piano, or what would you use for music?
The radio.
Radio.
The radio was, you know, when the radio first come out, you won't believe this, we didn't listen to it in the daytime, but everybody hurried up and had supper, got all cleaned up, and we all went in the living room and sat down and listened to the radio. It was a good family time. We couldn't believe we was listening to somebody in Chicago or someplace else. That's pretty remarkable when you live a secluded life out there. Our little world was pretty small, but it was a busy one.
So the farm had electricity then?
No,
No.
batteries. So that's why we didn't listen to it all day long. Just listen. And everybody had a chance to listen at the same time. So it was a family time. Kids don't believe that now, but that's the way it was.
And some of the programs was music.
Oh yeah, lots of music.
Do you remember any particular song that was your favorite?
Oh no, let's see. No. I liked
San
lots of
Antonio
music.
Road.
I liked lots of music.
San Antonio Rose?
That was oh my gosh, I gotta tell you this. The first year I taught school, I had 37 children, and all grades but the 8th grade. And one little boy was in the 3rd grade. His name was Bob Smith. And every time I'd look at him that day, that first day was just, it's etched in my mind. He was just smiling like the world was just great. And when I dismissed them, back in those days, they marched out of the room and stood in line until you said they're dismissed, and then they went home. Well, after I said he was dismissed, he come back, and he stood by my side, and he took my hand. He said, "Miss Hagler, you're the prettiest teacher we ever had." When he grew up, he was really a good dancer. We still went to all these dances, and he'd sing to me when they'd play San Antonio Rose. Here he'd come, "Dance with me, teacher." He was quite a guy. He turned out to be a big auctioneer. How big a man was he, Bill?
How big a man?
I mean, prominence and all. Wasn't he important?
Oh yeah.
Very important in Fairview.
Yeah.
Just come from nowhere, just the sand hills, just like I did. He was a great guy. But you know, they're all gone now. I don't have any of them to talk to anymore. And that's sad, because they were good kids. I don't think I had a little Indian that first year. I can't remember. But once in a while, there would be an Indian. Oh yes, there was an Indian boy in the class too. Yeah, one. You know, that was hard for them to go to our school. Yeah. That was very hard for
Tell them
them.
about that One that brought his daughter.
The what?
One that brought his daughter.
Oh, when my sister started teaching, you know, that time I told you, she had all her students all lined out, and pretty soon something opened the door. She said it was the tallest Indian she ever saw in her life, and the little tiny girl he was bringing, he wanted her to go to school. He brought her in, and she got the desk assigned to her and got all settled. Then he went out by the windows out farther away, but he could see in the windows. He laid his blanket and he sat there all day for 3 weeks. And then he'd go take her home. He wasn't going to let any of those white kids mistreat his little girl. And then after that, she would come in by herself, and you never knew where he was, but he was out there in the woods. He waited all day for her and took her home.
Did she stay the whole school year?
Oh, yeah.
Did she?
Yeah, went clear through the 8th grade. But after the first year, I don't know whether he stayed with her or not then. But they didn't have a good feeling toward us. We were the outlaws in their world. But that was an interesting thing to happen to a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so shy, but she was a sweet child. Her name was Lily Oldcamp.
Lily?
What was his name, Bill?
I don't know.
I don't remember that either.
Well, his name was surely the same as hers.
Yeah, he was an Oldcamp, but I don't remember an Oldcamp family, just those two people. But there had to be. I don't know that. I've forgotten quite a bit.
You remember quite a bit too, though.
Really?
So how many children would be in your classroom?
Well, the first year I taught, there was 37, all grades but the 8th grade. There would be close to 40. That's a big, when I think about that now, I don't know how I ever made it. I don't know why they put up with me. But we all come out even somehow.
What would you do for lunch?
Your mother packed your lunch and you took it with you.
And what would that usually be?
Oh, we always had good sandwiches. We always had lots of food. Too much, really. But, and fresh fruit. And she made the best cinnamon rolls I ever ate anywhere. They were good. You were lucky if you had a cinnamon roll every day. You didn't have one every day. And sometimes you'd have a boughten cookie. They weren't very good. But the cinnamon rolls were good. Oh, and she made the best pies. Oh boy. It was, we had lots of food.
You graduated from high school in 31, is that what you said?
In 19, what did I say?
31, I think.
27 I entered, 31 I graduated. 2 years later I started teaching.
So that's kind of during the Depression time. Do you remember anything in particular about that?
Everybody was in the same boat. We had nothing, but we just kept going.
Did your mother make a lot of your own clothes?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got a Bunny, do you have a picture of my first day of school?
Not with me here.
Not here.
I don't think
It's over at her house. Oh, I had a new dress. Mother had made me a new dress, but my new shoes didn't come. I had to wear my old shoes. I can remember that very well. And my first teacher, she wasn't a lovable person. I just wasn't quite sure about her. My mother and father were very lovable and very concerned about what you're doing and all about your life. But this lady was a different kind of person that I'd ever met. I didn't like her. And nobody ought to say that about the first grade teacher.
Well, what made you decide to be a teacher?
Back in those days, you could either be a teacher or a nurse. That's all there was. That's all the choice you had. And I didn't want to be a nurse, so I decided to be a teacher. I had some good teachers.
A favorite subject?
Oh, this sounds unreal. I love science. I still do. I was going to be a science teacher. I taught first grade for 38 years. There wasn't much science in the first grade.
Discovery.
You what?
It's the age of discovery.
Yeah. My daughter, the reason I became a first grade teacher, it was time for my daughter to start to school. And I enrolled her that morning that the school was to start, and they didn't have school that day. So I told my husband, we ought to take the children to a circus. They've never been to a circus yet. He said, okay, let's do. So we went up to Enid to a circus. Well, you know, a circus, no air conditioning. It was torture. But Bill loved it. He just, oh my. Anyway, when I came home, my phone was ringing, and I said, hello, and he says, this is Paul Kratz. He's the superintendent of the school. He says, I need to talk to you, Violet, and slammed the receiver down. I thought, I wonder what I've got into now. And he come over and he said his first grade teacher had enrolled over 40, now remember this, 40 first graders, got mad at him at noon and resigned and left town. He was up the creek for a teacher. That was World War, were we having a war then? I don't remember. Anyway, everybody was gone.
It was just the end of it.
So he said, if you'll help me for 2 weeks, I'll find somebody. At Christmas, he kept coming over from time to time. He hadn't found anybody. At Christmas, he says, don't you think you can stay the rest of the year? And I stayed. How many years did I teach there? 33 here in Okeene. And I'd already taught 8 years when I started. Doesn't that make 41? I think so. But anyway, that was weird. I had retired, see. I wasn't going to teach anymore. Don't ever say you're going to stop, because you don't. You keep going.
So what did your husband do for a living?
My first husband was an insurance man. But he didn't much care for children. So I think I was married to him 23 years. Then we were divorced. And then you won't believe this. 43 years after I had finished college, my college sweetheart come back, and we were married. He's a super guy. He'd lived in New Mexico most of the time. He was a great guy. He come from a long line of doctors. His grandfather was a doctor, his dad was a doctor, and several of his nephews are doctors. Now, they're mostly settled near Wichita Falls, Texas. But my goodness, there's so many, I don't know. I don't know them all. He was a great guy, but his health wasn't good, and Oklahoma wasn't a good place for him to live, but he wanted to stay. He's really a nice fella. Don't I have a picture of Carol, Bunny?
Yes.
I want them to see who Carol looked like. He was good.
Well, what role did church have in your life?
Well, we
Any?
weren't able to go to church when we were young. Now, isn't he a handsome guy?
He's got a sweet smile.
He is some kind of guy.
Okay, we'll put that and see
That
if
was
we
my
can go.
college sweetheart.
And how did he find you after all those years?
Well,
Phone book.
he came back to see his brother was a doctor in Alva, and he came back. I think it was Thanksgiving time to celebrate Thanksgiving with his brother. And when he got to Sealing, he thought, well, I wonder if Violet still lives in Okeene. So he called me up. I could not believe it. But he was a great guy. I'm glad he came back. We had, how many years were Carol and I married, Bunny? I forget.
Close to 20, I think. Wasn't it?
I just, right now, I've just all
No, I'm sorry, wasn't that right?
mixed up. I don't know.
She called me one day and said, "What do you think about if I go out on a date?" I told her, I said, "Hell, you're 21, ain't you?"
So you got your son's approval.
Yeah. And if there were ever two people that were different, it was Bill and Carol. But they got along beautifully. Yeah.
Well, then we should probably go back and talk about your children. You had two?
Yeah, Bill and Bunny.
Three.
Oh
Three.
yeah, I lost the third one. Yeah, he just lived 5 hours. That still bothers me. Yeah, I don't like to think about that, 'cause he should have lived.
So Bill and Bunny?
Bill and Bunny.
Bill and
Her
Bunny.
name's Marilyn June, but nobody knows what it is. I think I picked a pretty name.
Merrill and
June.
It is pretty.
Yeah. Well, and he was William Edward, two grandpas, named for his grandfathers. Just he and his grandpa, they just run the world out here. What the rest of us wanted, that wasn't important. This is what he and grandpa were doing. But it was a good training. And I think my dad said it pretty good. He said, "Violet, you're not raising a sunflower." I was raising a boy.
Well, go ahead.
He was making a man out of him. Yeah.
What were holidays like?
Well, Christmas was a big thing. And Thanksgiving was, we always went to your grandparents for Thanksgiving. And Christmas, it was just a family affair. But our family was pretty good size, so we had lots of things going on. Yeah.
What were some of the things you would do for fun besides dance?
Well, that was it.
Was it?
You worked all the rest of the time. You're supposed to be busy doing stuff. And it was a good life, though.
And we got sidetracked on church. Was church?
We didn't have a car, so we was 8 miles from a church. You can't get to church in time. It'd be over by the time you went there in a wagon. But anyway, Mother made sure we knew what the Bible was and lots of Bible stories. Yeah, it was good. When I married and came over here, I started attending church regularly. And that's my church over there, the Methodist church.
You didn't have far to walk.
No, I thought about that when I moved down here. I used to live 5 blocks up this street, right across the street from the school. Yeah.
So you walked to work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
In fact, you did most of everything walking when I was a youngster. You walked wherever you was going. But it was okay.
Okeene changed a lot during your time here.
Yes, it has. Just the people. The West Acres, there's a big housing addition out there. That was just a wheat field. What year did that start, Bunny?
I think in the late 70s.
Yeah. So I came here, when did I get married? I can't really remember.
37.
Yeah, 1937. So it was just, this was originally a German town. Just Okeene was settled by wheat farmers mostly. Those days are gone now. You don't hardly ever see a combine. But anyway, the street just always looked the same to me. Once in a great while we'd come to Okeene after we got a car, but it was a day trip. You came over and usually right after lunch, but you'd get home about 5 o'clock. It'd take a long time to go 18 miles. See, I lived way out there. But it was a good place to live.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I told you, my grandfather brought, did I tell you that I brought 5 girls and 5 boys from Kansas when he came here, and they all settled in a group. And they still live in a group. That's just Hagler country out there. It's in the 3rd generation. Isn't it the 3rd generation now, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah. We came to stay.
From Kansas, then, and where before Kansas? Germany? Were they German?
No, my father was born in Iowa.
That's where she gets her longevity. I'm just joking.
But anyway, we had what did we have down at Romano's a week or 2 ago?
Family reunion.
A family reunion. There were between 90 and 100 there. I wouldn't be able to tell you who they were. I don't know.
Were you the oldest?
Yeah.
Anyone else come close?
No, not that I know. Did anybody else come to my age, Bill?
No.
No.
Charlene, how old is
Yeah.
she? She was younger than you, but
Well, she's probably in her early 70s.
oh no, she's older than that. She's probably in her 80s, because I'm 75 almost.
Well, you better listen to Bunny. She knows what's going on.
Did anyone else in your family live to be 100?
Yeah, my oldest sister lived to be 102. Yeah. But she wasn't living alone like I was. She was in a rest home. And I'm not going to a rest home. I tell Bill to drive fast when he goes by a rest home. I'm not stopping there.
So what do you think the secret is? Why do you think, what do you attribute your long life to?
I have no idea. Pure accident. Don't know. She lived to be, my mother lived to be 93, my dad was 81, and my 2 brothers were in their late 80s. My oldest sister, like I said, was 102. My youngest sister died before she was 80. And my youngest brother, how old was Jim? Was he in his 80s, Bunny? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was.
We came to stay.
Well, did you ever expect to live to 100?
No, I didn't.
But when your sister did, you think, I'm going to too?
She was a little over 10 years older than I was. No, I didn't think I'd live to be 100. I still can't believe it.
Well, you look great.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Maybe you better have your eyes checked.
How did you celebrate your 100th birthday?
What did we do, Bunny?
We had a big party.
Had a big party across the street.
Oh.
Here's the book if you want to look at it.
Now, if you want somebody to dream up a party, get Bunny. She can do it. And my land, I don't know how many people came there.
Over 150 signed the book.
And I knew most of them.
Lots of kids come, she taught in school.
Oh, yeah. They weren't kids anymore.
Well, no, but
Yeah, lots of them.
I'm not either.
To me, you are.
Well, yeah.
I'm still working on him.
Well, is there anything left on your bucket list you want to do?
No, I just want to live every day and be comfortable and happy. I don't like stresses, and I don't like traffic. Oh, it just drives me crazy when cars are going by me every direction. And I've been driving since when? Lord knows, way back there.
13.
Since you were 13.
Yeah. But they're not friendly anymore.
Roads are a little bit better, though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You don't have mud puddles to run through and all that stuff.
Well, would you go to Oklahoma City very often? And in your younger days? No.
That was just like a different country.
Well, the biggest town you would go to?
That was the biggest town. Well, later I spent a summer in Europe. My daughter husband was stationed in somewhere in Germany. Where was that, Bunny?
Schweinfurt.
Yeah, Schweinfurt. And took my grandson, my only grandson. And so I had to go over there and see about him. I spoiled him pretty good. He's a great guy now. He's a big architect out in Los Angeles. Yeah,
That's a long way from Okeene.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. He went out there to manage a men's clothing store. And he heard about this program that was going on. Buddy, can you tell him how Dwight got into school?
How I got into school? No.
But anyway, he decided to finish up going to school. How did that all happen, Buddy?
Well, he went to OSU for a year and didn't like what he was doing, so he went to Tulsa and got a job with a clothing store, and they eventually moved him to California, and then he found a school out there that he liked.
Yeah. Then he married a lady that's a nurse, a graduate nurse. They're a great couple.
And what do you do for hobbies today? Do you read? Garden?
Usually take naps.
Take naps?
Oh, let's see, for my hobby. I've always sewed a lot. I've just done lots and lots of sewing, but I can't do that anymore. My vision isn't that good anymore. I read some, but I listen to lots of. I'm a great music fan. I could listen to music 24 hours a day. And there's my TV has a music station, that plays all the. I like that.
Do you have a favorite?
Not really, but I like modern swing. I like really good country, not trashy country, but I like to listen to that too.
Well, how early in the morning do you get up
Nowadays,
nowadays?
about 8 o'clock. I used to get up at between 5:30 and 6, all teaching years, but those days are gone.
And then how late do you stay up?
Well, I usually wake up from my evening nap about 11 o'clock and go to bed. I like to listen to music in the evening. And I put it on the music station. It's good to sleep by. What happened to this thing? Anyway,
Did you belong to a homemaker club? Oh no, you taught, so you wouldn't have had time to belong to a homemaker club. Did your mother?
yes. And my sister, oldest sister. Well, my young sister did too, but I didn't. I just worked all my life. And then when I finally retired, I just let it go.
Do you have a philosophy or of life or a motto that you live by today?
No, not really. When you work all the time, you don't think about those things. Or I don't. But let's see. How many years did I take off? I took off 4 years to have my children. Then I went back to work. When Bunny took me to school for the 2 weeks that lasted 33 years. Yeah. That was a long 2 weeks, but it was a good one.
Did you have many more Indian children in your class?
No, not. There aren't any Indians. Are there any Indians around Okeene, Bill?
No.
I don't think so.
Do you remember your first airplane?
My
Seeing your first airplane?
No, I don't remember that.
Remember much about World War II with the town that you lived in?
World War II, it was hard to get certain foods. We couldn't get enough sugar in those days. And you couldn't buy shoes. I remember one pair I wore so long, I wondered how they even stayed on the feet. But you couldn't buy shoes. It was hard. And you were just allowed so much sugar in a month or 2 weeks or whatever they measured it by in those days. So you didn't do a lot of baking.
And they didn't have school lunches at that point either, did they?
In what point now?
In the 40s, during the war.
No. Mm-mm. No, it was a little rough. But you know, the people around Okeene, they came here with a determination to stay and make a go of it, and they did. They made it.
And then they got into rattlesnakes.
Oh gosh. Everybody remembers that about Okeene. Oh, I do my shopping early in that week and shut the doors, and I don't go out.
Never went on a hunt?
Oh no. Bill could tell you about the hunts, but I can't tell.
I sure wouldn't have go on one either, so.
No. I don't like snakes. That was one thing my father always told us when we were riding a horse. Now, what did he tell us about fences? Don't ever get off the horse at a fence row, because that's where the weeds grow the highest. That's where the snakes will be. Did you know that?
That makes sense though, doesn't it?
Yeah. But if you if you went 10 miles out this direction, you'd see a big what they call, what do they call that canyon, Bill?
The Gypsum Canyon?
Gypsum Canyon. There's a big gypsum plant out there, like a $5 million deal. It's huge. And it's been there, it started very small, but it's grown over the years. But those hills are just gypsum. You just dig in there and it's just white, it's just gypsum. That's what these walls are made of. Here and lots of other places. They used to make plasterboard out there. You know what plasterboard is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and at one time, Southern was the last plant that made plasterboard in Oklahoma. But they don't make it anymore, do they, Bill?
No.
Oh, it's over. But they still mine a lot of stuff. It's interesting, really, how the good farmland is out there, and still under that ground is just the gypsum. Big gypsum hills, big canyons.
Yeah.
Now there's big oil wells on top of the canyons. Yeah,
They're all over this county,
Yeah.
it looks like.
pretty much.
Well, I want to know, when history is written, what do you want it to say about you?
About me,
Mm-hmm.
that I came from a great family. I had wonderful parents, great brothers and sisters, and we all lived in this area where we could see each other while we grew up. But after they grow up and get married, they begin to spread out and go different directions. I'd like them to know that I taught school a long time. Made lots of beautiful friends in the classroom. It was a safe place to be. Nobody bothers the classroom. Can you think of anybody that went in and bothered the classroom?
Not back in those days, no.
No. Do they now?
Some
What do they do?
bad things.
Huh?
Bad things.
Good heavens. That's not right, is it?
Nope.
No. Well, let's elect a new governor and pass a law. Straighten it out.
What's your biggest challenge today? Being 100, what's the biggest challenge?
Gee, I don't even know. My family's still the big thing in my life. I have a great-grandson that lives in Chicago, and he's a joy. His name is Benjamin, and he's going to be in the first grade this year. And when you talk to him on the telephone, he'll say, "This is Benjamin, and I'm going to be in the first grade." It was a big thing for him.
And he's not a sunflower either, huh?
He's great.
Well, do you remember voting for the first time?
Yeah, I did. In fact, we didn't have a car, and I rode in the wagon with my dad. We went to vote, and on the way I said, "Dad, what am I? Am I a Republican or a Democrat?" He said, "You're a Democrat." He told me. We didn't know much about politics. All we had was a newspaper, and it came out from Wichita Eagle. Yeah. You have no idea what life was like in those days. But you know, it was a good life. It really was. Everybody cared about everybody else, and they were concerned about what was going on. Yeah. In fact, I think I told you I lived 8 miles from Canton. That's where the doctor lived. And when I was born, he came in a buggy, horse and buggy. My mother told me that. So that's how far back it was. Now I don't know if they even have a doctor in Canton. Okeene sends one over there every day, so one of our doctors go over there. It was a different world. The 4th of July was a big thing. That was the big celebration because a carnival always came to Canton, and that's the only place we'd get to see a carnival. We'd go to the carnival, go to the 4th of July, stay all day, go home, and just think we had a great time.
They have rides at the carnival?
Oh yeah, you get to ride the merry-go-round. Oh yeah, that was great stuff. I don't ever remember a carnival coming to Okeene. I suppose it did, but the snake hunts, oh my, I don't like snake hunts.
Anything else you want to add before we close off?
Well, I'm awfully glad you came here.
I am too.
It's a pleasure to know both of you.
Well, then we'll say thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Well, you're so welcome.
All right.